Clint Eastwood, a rather controversial figure in the industry. Being a renowned Hollywood figure comes at its own price. From having an unstable academic life to almost being involved in a plane crash while serving time in the military, Clint had a lot going on in his life. Despite all that, he achieved his life's goal by establishing himself as one of the top talents in Hollywood as an actor and director. He changed the 90s through his influential performance in several action films which became the highlight of his career. But what about Clint Eastwood behind the screen? What was his equation with Sondra Locke? How can someone act as Clint did after being in a 14-year-old relationship with someone? Lend us your ears as we take a look at Clint Eastwood, who reveals what we all suspected. 1. Clint, Maggie, and Sondra. What is up with Hollywood and their affairs? It's like people can't just get enough of it. Like seriously, this is our third video on Hollywood and its shady activities already. Now, coming back to Clint Eastwood. While many of you might recognize him from some of his reputed work as mentioned at the start of this video, there is another side to him which disclosed itself recently. To say that Hollywood is filled with glamour would be an understatement. Actors and actresses have their fair share of fan following. But the catch is that in most cases fan bases are formed when an actor or an actress acts well in a film that the audience likes, therefore they start following her work. However, many are just admired because of their looks and style. Now, this can be a controversial opinion, but think about it. If you try hard enough, you can picture someone in your mind itself, an actor or an actress who you just admire because they look good. As softly as we can present it, this beauty pageant can sometimes lead to people losing their control and engaging in activities they shouldn't. Affairs, extramarital relationships, and everything that comes under this category have been a part and parcel of Hollywood for a long time now. While some might be driven by the notion that it's recent, sorry to burst your bubble, but this is so not the case. This has been going on since the early 1900s when these things were frowned upon but were not discussed as much in public. While it would not have been a big deal if something like this happened to a common man or woman, the case is different with Hollywood celebrities. Artists and craftsmen who are never hidden from the public eye have to go through all sorts of questions and answers as to what they are doing, why, and how. Why do you ask? Because the public is curious, and this is how things have been from the start. Think about it, or take any modern celebrity for that instance whom you follow diligently. Do you feel that if they would not have chosen the path to stardom, you would have had a hint of what is going on in their personal life? Who are they married to? How many kids do they have? Are they suffering from a life-threatening disease? And any other information that you are aware of now? No, but anyway, moving on from the philosophical part, let's dive right into this, shall we? Okay, answer this first. How many years do two people need to spend together to challenge society, lie about nurturing two children which one of the partners isn't even aware of, step out of their marriage, and then eventually forget about each other like those 14 years never existed? Oops, we spilled the beans there, didn't we? Well, no point in guessing now, but you must take a moment to digest that all this happened in the span of 14 years. So let's talk about where it all started. Clint Eastwood and Sondra Locke first met on the set of The Outlaw Josey Wales in 1972. Locke at the time was a rising star who was nominated for an Academy Award for her role in The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. It is believed that they met through a common friend. Clint at the time was married to Maggie Johnson, however, the spark between them was undeniable from the moment they met. You can say that they hit it off in the first go itself. By then, Clint was already an established actor and director recognized for his work throughout the industry. While Locke was also doing well on her level, she did not have what we consider a major back-through till she met Clint. Soon enough, they started working together on multiple projects and their chemistry was pretty evident. The film The Outlaw Josey Wales in 1975 skyrocketed Locke's fame and attracted more fans than ever. Some other projects that the pair worked on together include The Gauntlet 1977, where Locke is portrayed playing a witness who teams up with a cop to survive a rather treacherous journey, Every Which Way But Loose 1978, and the sequel Any Which Way You Can. 1988, in which she played a country singer, and many other films which went on to establish her on a much higher level. While the prying eyes of the media and the public suspected that something was going on between the two, which was quite evident for that matter, they denied such claims. But it was not just Sondra Locke that Clint was involved with. Despite being married in a traditional setting to Maggie, Clint could not, or was not able to resist his extramarital affairs, which we will get to later. Sondra, on the other hand, was aware of his marriage to Maggie but did not seem to have a problem in being romantically involved with a married man. Before we forget, Sondra at the time was also married to Gordon Anderson. What seemed like the best on- and off-screen chemistry started to unravel itself around the 1980s. There are multiple complexities that come into play for both partners. But before that, let us understand the general perspective of the situation. The first step that the supposed couple took, which was out of the ordinary, was that they did not want to get married. Even though they were committed to each other and were showing all the signs of a regular couple, Sondra stated that they do not need a piece of paper to solidify what they had. Clint did not force the idea of marriage either. However, he did insist on not having kids. What Sondra wasn't aware of was the fact that he was secretly raising 2 kids, a fact that was hidden from Sondra for a long time. The thing was that Clint was an established actor and director in Hollywood, and Sondra was famous, but she was still in the process of carving her establishment in a relatively male-dominated industry. This led to a power struggle between the couple, where Sondra's decisions were largely influenced by Clint. She wanted to explore other genres and roles, but it was not happening at the time. Also, she had to get 2 abortions done in the late 1970s, which, you guessed it, was influenced by Clint. At some point in time, Clint himself was surprised that it was unusual for him to be with one woman for such a long time and actually feel what he was feeling with her. This statement might be gross, but it is open to interpretation. What do you think about this? Let us know in the comments section below. While Sondra's professional life wasn't impacted as much, she did go through emotional distress from all the control that was imposed upon her. At one point in time, she even got a tubal ligation done. However, major differences initiated between the couple when Sondra still remained legally married to her husband Anderson, even after Clint finalized his divorce with Maggie. Maggie was the one with whom Clint had 2 of his children named Kyle, born in 1968, and Allison, born in 1972. While Maggie was aware of Clint's tricks and affairs, she stuck onto the marriage for her own reasons. Many believe that she decided to pull it off just because of the children. But by the early 1970s, it was largely evident that their marriage was just a formality and there was nothing between them whatsoever. Clint being distant from Maggie, being involved with other women, and ascending more than ever in his career just added to the turmoil. It was in 1978 that the couple formally decided to separate. However, it was in 1984 that their 31-year-old marriage came to an end. Wait until you hear the amount at which the divorce was settled. If nothing else, this would solidify the man's success at the time. Maggie received a whopping $25 million as a settlement, which included assets, property, and of course hard cash. This was one of the largest settlements in Hollywood's history given Clint's status. 2. A legal battle. While legal battles are no new thing and countless happen across the globe, a few of those gain significant attention. It is mostly because of the parties involved and the allegations that have been pressed by the parties on each other. In this case, prominent figures from a multi-millionaire industry such as Hollywood were involved. While Clint and Sondra came across a rough patch, which we talked about moments ago, things escalated rather quickly in 1989. While Locke was directing her film Rat Boy, Clint arranged for all her stuff in the home they shared to be moved to the shed. The strangest part is that he did all this without her consent and did not even inform her of doing it. Additionally, he got all the locks and passcodes changed, which forced Locke to stay out of her own home. This was enough for Locke to file a palimony lawsuit against Clint. The lawsuit was filed in Los Angeles Superior Court. The lawsuit was claimed on the emotional distress that Sondra went through due to Clint's actions, breach of contract, and fraud. Clint promised Sondra a major boost in her career and a much more stable and secure future within the industry, from which he stepped down later as things got heated between them. Sondra went ahead to point out the emotional distress that she went through as a result of Clint being controlling and influencing many of her life's personal and professional decisions. This obviously was directed towards the fact that she had to terminate 2 pregnancies. Combining all this, she felt liable for a settlement at the cost of her financial and emotional distress. Things were so out of control that at one point during the proceeding, Sondra asked Judge Dana St. Henry to keep Clint away from the Bel Air home because Sondra was aware of his terrible temper and claimed that he had been abusive with her more frequently. While most people were not interested in this narrative, their sole focus was on the money that would be offered as a settlement. In 1990, the case was settled out of court, where the terms were never disclosed to the public. The only information that came out was that Clint had agreed to get Sondra a multi-million-dollar deal with Warner Brothers Studio. The settlement was intended to provide Locke with a stable and secure position in the industry so that she could continue to act and direct in movies. While the settlement was done and over with, the public and media had their views to give on the situation, and it was essentially divided into 2 sides. If you remember, we mentioned before that for Locke, establishing herself was proving to be tough in a rather male-dominated industry. But there came a point in her career where she was earning a six-figure income and came close to Clint. Many were convinced that this case was just another example of influential and powerful men controlling everything they could, while others even went ahead to call Locke a gold digger, believing that there was no actual case to be brought up in trial and all she was trying to do was extract money from a renowned industrial figure like Clint. When it looked like things were starting to settle down, the courts burst open in 1995 as Sondra Locke filled yet another case against Clint, and this time it was for fraud. Sondra claimed that the deal with Warner Brothers, which was promised to her after the first settlement, was a mere ruse plan to keep her out of the industry. She also claimed that Clint used his influence within the industry to prevent her from getting work in Hollywood. The second lawsuit as well was settled without any disclosure to the public. Sondra received an anonymous amount of money from Clint, however. This time things were different as compared to the first settlement. Sondra found it difficult to get her position back in Hollywood as an actor and director. Many people pointed their fingers to yet another stunt pulled by Eastwood, which showed male dominance and how it affected a woman's career. There were a lot of debates and discussions on gender inequality within the industry, and many frowned on the fact that Locke had to suffer because of Eastwood. 3. What happened to Sondra after Eastwood? If it is still unclear to anyone, let's just say that Sondra Locke, an inspiring actor and director who earned her position through hard work, got busted after her breakup with Eastwood. Well, not her, but her career was the one that suffered. The deal that she got from Warner Brothers after the Palimony settlement turned out to be a sham. Despite showcasing a stellar performance as a director through Ratboy 1986, Warner Brothers rejected 30 of her pitched projects, which closed almost every door for her. From zero to none, acting and directing opportunities struck her with a wave of isolation from an industry she once was a massive part of. Her last directorial work, named Impulse 1990, did little to revive her career and received mixed reviews from the audience as well. In an attempt to reclaim what was lost, she penned her autobiography titled The Good, the Bad, and the Very Ugly: A Hollywood Journey in 1997. The book encapsulated so many different things, which made it a sign of redemption for an actress who lost everything to mere power. It covered significant details on their relationship, the power struggle that she had to face at the time with Eastwood, and what happened after their separation. Apart from providing explicit details on the legal matter and what went through, it was more from her perspective. We feel that somewhere it was equally important for her to share her perspective as the one who had to suffer. This provided a different perspective to viewers and readers alike on the situation that was going on back then. A fit actor like Locke was known to lift weights occasionally and practice transcendental meditation, although she hated running. Another questionable factor is that Locke was always conservative when it came to details regarding her birthday and real age. While it was eventually determined later, she mostly acted in roles made for a young female start and was verbal about it as well. However, it was in 1990 that doctors confirmed the diagnosis of breast cancer for Sondra Locke. She even mentioned that due to many factors in my personal life, I have sustained 2 years of extreme and unnecessary stress, which my doctors tell me has been my enemy. He doesn't care if I live or die. The second statement came to a shocker from Locke as he directed it towards Eastwood, who stopped any means of communication from the actress or a love interest with whom he had been for 14 years. Locke's treatment for breast cancer was on, as she went through a double mastectomy at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, which was then followed by chemotherapy. It was during this treatment that she began dating Clint Scott, who at the time was an intern assigned to perform the post-surgical checkup. Their affair was soon made public, and there were certainly eyes that raised at the equation of this relationship. There were a couple of things that just seemed weird. For starters, the 17-year age gap between Sondra Locke and Clint Scott, and if this wasn't enough, Scott's mother was just 3 years older than Sondra at the time. Locke considered their relationship to be a real, supportive, and equal relationship. It was in 1971 that Scott moved in with her. In 2001, she purchased a lavish property in the form of a 6-bedroom gated mansion in Hollywood Hills. Locke had hoped to spend the later years of her life in peace and largely remained out of the public's eye. However, in 2015, her cancer returned and metastasized to her bones. After a long struggle with the disease, she passed away at the age of 74 on November 3, 2018, at her Los Angeles home from cardiac arrest, which was related to breast and bone cancer. Her remains were cremated on November 9th at Pierce Brothers Westwood Village Memorial Park and Mortuary, and the ashes were given to her widower, Gordon Anderson. Locke bequeathed Anderson an estimated fortune of $20 million and seemed to have always supported him financially. Her unfortunate demise was kept under wraps until December 13th, when Radar Online broke the news the day before Eastwood's latest film, The Mule 2018, opened in theaters nationwide, citing the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. The Associated Press said, "It is not clear why it took nearly 6 weeks to come to light. Anderson, according to the scant Ape report, was unreachable, and a representative for Locke ignored people's request for comment." So hidden had basic facts have been kept, that the New York Times noted 41 days after she died a list of survivors was not immediately available. Locke's death received no television coverage except for a 15-second spot on ABC World News Tonight. Eastwood did not comment on the death, nor did any of Locke's other living exes, nor any of her friends or relatives. Co-stars such as Richard Dreyfuss, Cicely Tyson, Louis Anderson, Sally Kellerman, Stacy Keach, and Ted Neely, all active on social media, were equally silent. On the 91st Academy Awards telecast, broadcast nearly 4 months after Locke died, she was omitted from the in memoriam segment. In the absence of any explanation, some figured that Locke must have requested the blackout in her final wishes, perhaps to keep her real age under wraps. Clint Eastwood was born on May 31, 1930 in San Francisco, California, into a modest, working-class family during the Great Depression. His father, Clinton Eastwood Sr., worked as a steel worker and later as a gas station attendant, while his mother, Ruth Wood, was a factory worker. The economic hardships of the era meant that the family had to move frequently in search of work, which resulted in an itinerant childhood for Clint as a youngster. This instability and exposure to the challenges of the working class would later be highlighted in the resilient characters he portrayed on screen. Growing up, Eastwood was tall, lanky, and somewhat shy, which made him stand out among his peers. He attended several different schools due to the family's frequent relocations, eventually settling in Oakland, California, where he attended Oakland Technical High School. Although Eastwood was not particularly interested in academics, he was known for his athleticism, especially in swimming, and his love of music. However, during his early school years, it was greatly evident that he showed little interest in pursuing higher education. After graduating high school in 1949, Eastwood worked a series of manual labor jobs, reflecting the blue-collar work ethic instilled in him by his parents. He took on various roles, including lifeguard, forest firefighter, and steelworker, all of which were physically demanding and provided him with a sense of discipline and endurance. One of his more unusual jobs was working as a swimming pool digger, a job that allowed him to build his impressive physique. Eastwood's entry into Hollywood was not exactly well planned. In 1950, during the Korean War, he was drafted into the U.S. Army and stationed at Fort Ord in California. It was here that Eastwood's good looks and impressive stature caught the attention of Hollywood insiders. After being discharged in 1953, he returned to California and, encouraged by friends and acquaintances who saw potential in his appearance, decided to try his luck in acting. He enrolled in acting classes and began to make the rounds of studios, but the path was not easy. Eastwood's early auditions were unsuccessful, and he struggled to find work, partly due to his inexperience and partly because he did not fit the conventional Hollywood image of the time. Despite these initial setbacks, Eastwood's perseverance paid off when he was offered a contract with Universal Pictures in 1954. Although he was initially cast in minor, often uncredited roles, this period marked the beginning of his long and storied career in Hollywood. His early struggles and varied life experiences would later inform his portrayal of tough, self-reliant characters, helping him to become one of the most iconic figures in American cinema. 5. Early struggle in Hollywood. In 1955, Clint was dropped off by Universal Studios, after which he faced multiple challenges that tested his resolve. The rejection came as a shocker to him, as in his mind a deal and a contract with the Universal Studios would have been a big break for him. However, the rejection of the same brought him back to square one, where it all began. Basically, he found himself doing small and UN-credited roles that would help build up his resume. However, the roles turned out to be so minor, whether it was in a TV serial or movies, that they did little to none to advance his career or add something strong to it, which could be considered close to something as a big break. If this wasn't enough, here is something else that exposes the harsh reality of this industry. At the time, Eastwood had to work 2 jobs, one as a swimming pool digger and the other at a gas station to support himself. However, his persuasiveness prevailed as he began to learn and took up acting class, where he intended to improve his stage confidence and bring major changes in his delivery of dialogue. It was after a long struggle in 1958, which landed him work strong enough to turn his career around for good. He was cast as Rowdy Yates in the CBS television series Rawhide. Although the presence of Clint Eastwood was secondary, his presence and charm through his character soon became a fan favorite and resonated with many. Rawhide ran for 8 seasons straight, covering a timeline of 1959 to 1965, and provided Eastwood with the necessary exposure to establish himself in Hollywood. During the series as well, Eastwood continued to work on his craft relentlessly and kept improving by the day. However, at one point in time, he became frustrated with the limited exposure that was offered through television. His intentions and desires were directed towards working in more challenging roles, which in turn would establish him as a much more serious actor. This opportunity finally knocked on his doors in 1964 in the form of a role in Man with No Name, in Sergio Leone's spaghetti western, A Fistful of Dollars. This was a gamble that Eastwood had to take to boost his career. There were multiple concerns around the film, one being a constricted budget, and the other that the lack of budget might harm Eastwood's reputation further. His portrayal of the enigmatic gunslinger, characterized by minimal dialogue and a cool, detached demeanor, struck a chord with audiences and established him as a new kind of action hero. Further, the success of A Fistful of Dollars was followed by For a Few Dollars More 1965 and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly 1966, which not only solidified Eastwood's place in Hollywood but also marked the beginning of a new phase in his career. These films were revolutionary in their style and storytelling, and Eastwood's performance became iconic. He returned to the United States as a bona fide star, having transformed his image from a struggling actor to one of the most sought-after talents in the industry. Eastwood's early struggles in Hollywood, marked by rejection, perseverance, and eventual breakthroughs, shaped him into the resilient and determined figure who would go on to become one of the most enduring and respected actors and directors in American cinema. His ability to endure and adapt during those difficult years not only defined his career but also contributed to the tough persona that became his trademark. 6. Was Clint Eastwood a womanizer? Clint Eastwood is someone who can be called a ladies' man. What people are mostly aware of are his 2 major relationships. One was with Maggie Johnson, which lasted for a staggering 31 years and ended with a settlement of $25 million. The other one lasted for 14 years with Sondra Locke, which does not require further details in this video. But apart from those 2, there were numerous other ladies with whom Clint was involved in a rather romantic way, and it was of no consequence to him whatsoever. The sad part is that it was even when he was legally married to Maggie Johnson, and many speculate that Maggie stayed in marriage despite knowing this truth, just because of the kids. In 1964, he started an affair with Roxanne Tunis, whom he met on the set of Rawhide. She was a dancer and a stuntwoman when Clint met her. It was with her that Clint gave birth to her daughter named Kimberly. However, the news and the affair, for that matter, was kept out of the public eye for a long time. In 1984, while committed to Locke, in a twisted sense, he got romantically involved with a flight attendant named Jacelyn Reeves. While the relationship was kept private, she gave birth to 2 of his children named Scott, born in 1986, and Catherine, born in 1988. He declined to acknowledge them as his kids, and they were raised primarily by Reeves. It went on for a while until they parted ways in 1995. In 1996, however, he got involved in a major relationship with Diane Ruiz, who met Clint in an interview for the television segment. This was Clint's 2nd marriage after Maggie. They even had a daughter named Morgan. Initially, the relationship seemed happy, and Ruiz played a significant role in Eastwood's life, even appearing in the reality TV show Mrs. Eastwood Company in 2012. However, the marriage began to unravel, and they separated in 2013, with their divorce finalized the following year. Later in 2014, he met Christina Sandera, a restaurant hostess at his Mission Ranch Hotel in Carmel, California. While it is being compared to his previous relationships, the couple has maintained a low-key profile. While they have been sport together at many red carpet events, it is believed that Christina is an essential aspect of his life, and they are together now as we speak. Let's conclude the video while we are at it. From what we learned about Clint, there are a few things for certain. There are multiple aspects to his life which form his overall character. An instance is a reputed figure in the industry who has been in a position of power for a long time, and he has reached there through his hard work. Whether it is acting, directing, and being an overall influential figure, he has worked on his craft and skills to reach where he is. The connections he formed on the way have been all the more helpful, whether it was in giving him a career boost or hindering someone else's. But this is just a picture of him as an actor and director. As a human, surely he is flawed with multiple relationships, commitment issues, and so much more, which we talked about in the video. There was an exclusive interview of Sondra Locke where she mentioned however most damaging to my future was the fallout with Eastwood. This was twofold. First, I had worked with him exclusively for so many years that I had not developed a network outside him and WB, his home studio. Second and most important was that his obvious enmity toward me had a surefire blackball effect. He didn't even have to articulate that he didn't want anyone working with me. They understood the situation. He was a very powerful figure in town and no one wanted to get on his bad side. Why bother? Why get involved? I will always believe that I had many fans in high places, but they were not willing to put themselves on the line. That is very expected in Hollywood. What do you think about the whole Sondra Locke and Clint Eastwood situation? Let us know in the comments below. If you are a history fanatic and love to indulge in such content, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. If you like this video, please drop a like and share it with people you know.